Last minute shakeup at 5:30 a.m., laundry situation not good. And when your focus is on helping your clients, it's easy to forget about yourself. But NASM knows trainers.
Morning ride is okay.
And staying in front of the day isn't always
Nice
as simple
ride.
as 1, 2, 3. So when the unexpected has you pressing pause,
What's the latest on creatine?
I'm going to get back to you on that.
let NASM1 help you press play. Visit NASM.org to sign up for a membership today.
You're listening to the Peak Physique Podcast with Andre Adams on the NASM Podcast Network.
Hey guys, welcome back to the NASM Peak Physique Podcast. I'm your host, Andre Adams, NASM Master Trainer and IFBB Physique Olympian. And today it's storytelling time. I've actually got a fun topic today, and it's called the power of visualization. And today, what I want you guys to leave with is really understanding how to think about those big goals, visualize, and then ultimately execute, and how can we manifest those into reality. Right, so that's going to be the goal for today, setting those big, scary goals, formulate that plan of action, and then execute, all by starting with the vision. And a lot of you guys probably hear, this is very cliche, right? We hear things like law of attraction, we hear thoughts become things, we hear visualization, but what do we really mean, and what can we actually do to incorporate these into our goal setting? Right, so for me personally, I can definitely say that I believe in things like law of attraction, energy, vibration, frequency, and this is something that you can put into action, but it does require action. Okay, that's the step that most people skip. They visualize or they dream, but they don't follow that up with an actual plan to execute. Okay, now I'm going to share some personal examples of how I've been able to leverage this in my past experiences, and hopefully it can help to inspire you to go chase your goals as well. One of the ones I love to start with is really just telling the story about earning my IFBB Pro card, and how that whole process looked, what my mindset was, what did that vision initially look like, and what did it take to get there. So we're going to go all the way back to 2012, 2013 timeframe. I actually came from the sport of powerlifting into the sport of bodybuilding and physique. And there was a division still going on today, obviously, which was men's physique that had just come out. And we didn't have a lot of information on it. Prep coaches weren't very common. There weren't a lot of people to talk to, especially being from Kenosha, Wisconsin, where I'm located at. So this was something that ultimately piqued my interest. And, once I competed for the first time as an amateur, I fell in love with the sport. And from there, it was game on. I knew 110% I want to become an IFBB pro. And one day I want to become an Olympian athlete, whatever that looks like. So in my head, I kind of had this big fuzzy picture of where I wanted to go. I didn't have a lot of clarity or detail behind it because it was also new. It was foreign to me. But once I started competing the first few times, I did pretty well. Qualified for a national show, right? A pro qualifier. And intentionally went. I had only been competing about 1 month. I went there to get my butt kicked. And that's exactly what I did. My very first show, only show to this day, amateur or pro, that I did not place. And that was 2013 NPC Junior Nationals in Chicago. And I, however, accomplished my goal of finding a coach while I was there. So again, I had my big, scary goal. It's a little fuzzy when I try to visualize. I knew I wanted to become an IFBB pro. And here's some of the steps that I can take to get there, right? Not a lot of information online, no one to talk to back at the gym where I'm from. So let me just go to one of these shows, see what I'm up against, and hopefully I can make some connections that'll push me closer to my goal. And ultimately, that's exactly what happened. I ended up linking up with the coach there who saw some potential in me and, taught me a few new things, taught me how to diet, and taught me about carb cycling, how to pose, right? Stage presence. And the vision every week was getting clearer and clearer. And I knew I was on the right trajectory to really manifest that vision that I had, right? Now, let's fast forward about 6 months. I was relentless on stage. And I actually went from not placing at all at NPC Junior Nationals to I was in kind of like a mini bulk for a few weeks. And then my coach at the time talked me into doing the North Americans in Pittsburgh that August. And I think when we decided to pull the trigger, I was maybe 4 weeks out. And I'm like, I don't know about this. I'm feeling kind of soft and out of shape right now. I'm trying to put size on. And he's like, no, just do it. Trust me. Like, your conditioning is good enough. You put on some good size. I got a good feeling about this show. So I'm like, all right, I'm going to trust him. We go to the show, and this is the first time that anyone had peaked me out properly for a show. And it was insane. I remember my body transforming so much over those final few weeks. And even though I came in maybe 1 or 2% softer than I would like, it was good enough to land me in that top 8 mix at this enormous national show with over 1,000 competitors. So now I'm starting to really, hit my stride. I'm starting to believe. So self-efficacy is starting to kick in that, hey, if I do the work, I think I can get there. Now, the downside to that was financially, I was a little bit strapped at the time. I had done 3 or 4 shows in a row. My girls were only 1 and 3 years old. I'm a single dad at the time, but it never changed my vision of where I was going. And we ultimately decided to go to the NPC Nationals that November in Fort Lauderdale, which was the very last opportunity that year to earn the pro card. And the closer we got, the more confidence I got, the less doubt I had in my head. And I remember very vividly my mindset shifting from, I have to get my IFBB pro card at this show, it's that or bust. My mindset shifted from that to, I don't care if it takes me 1 show or 1,000 shows. I know where the end destination is at, and I'm becoming an IFBB pro. I'm hoping it happens at the show, but if it doesn't matter because I know where I'm going, right? And long story short, or short story long, I flew down there. I remember making a Facebook post about, just how good I was feeling about the show. And it was huge classes. I mean, anywhere from 40 to 75 guys in each height class, which is insane at the time. And I was the first name that they called out to first call outs, and the rest is history. Ended up earning my IFBB pro card status at that show, manifested that fuzzy vision into reality. And from there, self-efficacy was through the roof. I felt like if I do anything, if I apply myself, I can achieve it. Now, we're going to jump forward a little bit because there's a continuation to this story. And I don't get to tell this story as often, so I'm glad that I get to share it with you guys on today's episode. But that whole next year, so I'm on cloud 9. Imagine that, right? Got my pro card. I'm one of the first, maybe the first and only IFBB pro in the state of Wisconsin at the time. And we're going into the next season, right, which would ultimately be my rookie pro year as an IFBB pro men's physique athlete. And I went into that season, honestly, excited. And at the same time, I also didn't really have a strategy. So I'm just competing in the hardest shows, whatever the first 2 or 3 shows are, that's what I'm doing. And it was the Orlando Europa. We had 5, 6 guys that were just all-stars, pretty much unbeatable at the time. 35 to 40 athletes in every show, which was crazy for the pros. And I think I placed top 10 or 11 at that show. Came right back a couple weeks later, did the New York Pro, which I didn't know at the time was other than the Olympia and the Arnold, that's kind of like the Super Bowl for bodybuilding, right? And placed top 10 there too. Now I remember my mindset at the time. I was actually unhappy with these top 10 finishes. Even though there's 35, 40 guys in each class, I felt like I belonged in that first call out. And no one was going to convince me otherwise. So every time I would just work 10 times harder. And I remember not getting discouraged necessarily, but it's a lot to take in, right? Because you're applying yourself, you're working hard. I didn't have an off season, so I'm going on 2 years straight of prepping. And I prepped all summer long, did some local events, guest posing, things like this. And then in the fall, I did another show. I think it was Fort Lauderdale. And I actually, again, placed 10th or 11th at that show. So by then I'm starting to get just a little bit frustrated. Maybe this sport isn't for me. Maybe I bit off more than I can chew, or maybe I hit my limit, right? Long story short, we end up going to the Mr. Olympia 2014, that September, just to spectate. So I'm there. I'd never been to an Arnold or an Olympia in my life. And a few of my buddies in the sport and my coach at the time, we had a booth there. We're teaching people how to pose and all this good stuff. And I was mind blown at, for one, the expo. So if you guys have never been to an Olympia or an Arnold expo, highly recommend going. We've got the Arnold Classic coming up soon. And it was honestly mind blowing and motivational for me. But the key was I also wanted to see up close and personal, who am I competing against? And what do the best athletes in this division look like in the world? Because that's who I need to beat. So I went again as a spectator. I watched it up close and personal. And I remember, so here's a great story for you guys. I took a picture, snapped a picture of the guys on that stage in first call out. And a lot of people would laugh at me, but I actually went home and printed that picture out. And what I did is I cut my own picture out and stuck it right on the stage, right up there with those top 5 Olympians. And I hung it right above my treadmill so that every day when I do my fasted cardio, I've got to stare at that same photo. And that's my, like a vision board, right? That's my visualization. And every day I would ask myself, what are you doing differently today to move yourself 1% closer to that goal? And it's important that you keep revisiting the goal. You don't just write it down and put it out in the universe. You got to keep revisiting it. You've got to measure your pace against the plan. You've got to adjust the plan. And you got to keep zooming in on that big fuzzy vision until it gets clearer and clearer and clearer. And you can start executing on more manageable steps, right? So let's fast forward maybe 2 months. I do another show. And then I end up doing the Kentucky Muscle Show. And finally, I placed top 5. In fact, I ended up 3rd place in that show. And I got compared to number 1 and 2. And for a moment there, I held the center position at that show. But I was a little inexperienced still in my posing, even though I had the physique. So I ended up 3rd, and I was happy with 3rd. That was the first time I had placed as a professional athlete. Got a paycheck, got a huge, sword trophy, and all kind of recognition from that. And again, this was towards the end of the season. There's maybe, I want to say, one more show that year. So now I'm like, dang, I was planning on that being my last show. I'm kind of burnt out physically and mentally. And I remember looking up, it was the Ferrigno Legacy, and it was in Santa Barbara, California, the weekend, so the Saturday after Thanksgiving. And I remember looking it up, and I'm like, gosh, the flights are so expensive. They're like $1,000. Hotels are expensive in Santa Barbara. And do I really want to diet through Thanksgiving? Probably not. So I didn't act on it right away. And the league rules are that you have to have your contracts mailed in about 7 days out. So again, I'm still thinking about it because I earned a couple Olympia points, but I'm like, I got this feeling I can win this, right? And ultimately, what was my vision? What's above my treadmill every day? It's me on the Olympia stage. And I kid you not, when we talk about visualization, 7 days out exactly, I wake up 2 a.m. and I was having the most realistic dream ever that my name got called. I was competing. They called me center stage. And I could vividly picture myself with my hands raised in victory, holding up the trophy from this big win. And I woke up and I was kind of defeated because I realized it was a dream. But then it hit me, maybe this is a sign I should do this show. And so, again, this is the deadline, right? I've got a matter of hours to get that contract sent over. I go online, I look up the flights. Again, they're still like $1,000. Hotels like $1,000. But I look up the prize money. The prize money was like $3,500. So in my head, it was enough for me to justify, well, just go win the show, right? No pressure. And you guys already know what decision I made. I ended up booking my flight, mailing that contract in exactly at the deadline. And 1 week later, I flew out to Santa Barbara, and there's 25 of the top physique pros in the world that I'm competing against, a couple Olympians in that show. And I could not believe it, but when we got into the judging, they called my name just like it happened in my dream, center stage, never moved me, and I finished first place, ultimately qualifying me for the Mr. Olympia 2015, and it also earned me a top 10 ranking and getting me the Arnold Classic invite, right? That was the very first year that they had the pro men's physique at the Arnold Classic, and they only chose the top 10 based on your international ranking. So it really just catapulted my career, but it all started from a vision that I had a year before, and I just kept zooming in, making it clearer taking the necessary steps, not backing off the gas pedal, and keeping that vision front and center in front of me every day and asking myself, how can I move closer to that goal today? And I can't stress enough how powerful that is. But that was it. That qualified me for the Olympia in 2015. I was right on that stage against those people that were hanging above my treadmill. And now I had an actual picture of me competing against these guys and ultimately becoming one of them, right? So I love sharing those stories. I don't get to share those quite enough. Guys, if you're just joining us, this is the Peak Physique Podcast, and we're talking about how to leverage the power of visualization for goal setting and manifesting your dreams into reality. While we're talking about goal setting, I want to talk about setting big, scary goals. And what I mean by that is it's just as easy to set a small goal as it is to set a big goal. It takes just as much energy. So why not set a big goal, right? You need to set the bar high. Don't underestimate your own potential. And again, you might not always know how you're going to get there, but when you set that goal, and then you start to zoom in on the details. And then you break these goals down into, let's say, more manageable chunks, into months, in the weeks, in the days, and the hours. And then all of a sudden, the goal becomes much clearer, right? If you wake up one day and you want to become a doctor or a nurse, you don't know how you're going to get there. You don't know what school you're going to go to, right? You don't know how long you're going to have to go to school. But once you actually start diving into that goal and breaking it down into actionable steps, you start to fill in the details. And it works the same way with any fitness goal. There's a very famous quote. I don't even know who said it, but I love this quote. And it's shoot for the stars. And if you come up short, you grab a handful of the clouds, right? So that's the importance of setting big, scary goals. And I live by this principle. So those of you that follow me, probably you've heard me talk about it before, but my own proxy for me, and it's not to say that, that I take ridiculous risks. I take measured risks with my goals. But if my goals don't scare my family, in particular, my mom, if they don't scare her, then I know I'm not dreaming big enough. So that's kind of my own proxy to myself. It's got to make me a little bit nervous too. And I know if I feel too good about it, I'm not dreaming big enough. All right. So we've got those big, scary goals. The next thing you're going to do is think about making those vision boards. Now, you heard me talk about my example of cutting my photo out, sticking it on the top 5 from the Olympia and hanging it above my treadmill. But I've also done this with other things, other areas of my life. Maybe it's a job, maybe it's a relationship, maybe it's family, maybe it's a house, a car, maybe it's monetary, financial goal. Whatever those things are, make those goals specific, create a vision board and hang it somewhere where you have to look at it every day. Maybe it's in the bathroom where you brush your teeth. Maybe it's in the kitchen, right on the refrigerator, but something where every day it's going to remind you to revisit that goal. Think about what action can I take today to move the needle 1% closer to that goal and manifest it into reality, right? When we're thinking about executing on any of these goals, it really comes down to that plan of action. We want to break this enormous mountain, this pyramid down that seems intimidating, it seems overwhelming, it seems monumental, right? How am I going to climb this, conquer this goal? But when we break that down into small, manageable steps, and every single day, I've got tunnel vision, I'm only looking at just the one step in front of me. And every day, you're going to take that next step until you start to build some momentum, right? And over the course of time, you're going to climb that mountain and ultimately manifest your goal. So start with that vision board. Start looking at everything that's on that vision board, break it down into smaller, manageable steps that you can execute on, and then break those down even further into daily goals, daily tasks. All right. One of the most important things you can do when you're manifesting those visions into reality is also keeping score. You've got to measure your pace and your progress against the plan. Now, a good analogy, since most of you guys out there are either athletes or coaches, a good analogy would be check-ins, right? If I am trying to visualize a certain physique that I want to build, and we're going throughout the course of this 16 to 20 week prep, we've got these accountability check-ins, AKA progress check-ins. And I'm keeping score. So is my body weight trending where it should be? Is my body composition trending where it should be? Is my conditioning appropriate for this many weeks out from the show? And we're measuring our progress against the plan. We know the plan, right? We know where we need to be at at the finish line. So it gives us an opportunity to revisit it, modify. Maybe we need to hit the gas, the intensity a little bit harder. Maybe we need to change the plan altogether. But you got to keep score, because the selection and the strategy of the tools you're using each week are going to get better when you're keeping score. And then also sticking to that deadline, right? You got to put a timestamp on this, because if you don't have a deadline, your goals, the action becomes less important, and your goals tend to just become dreams, right? We're not really advancing towards them. So again, just make sure you're keeping score, measure yourself against the plan, and adjust as you go. And then the last thing I'm going to leave you guys with here, because this happens to all of us, is, it's easy to talk about visualization. It's easy to talk about executing on a daily basis. But the reality is we all get negative thoughts. We get setbacks. We get obstacles. We get challenges that pop up. And you're going to have to be able to be flexible enough to pivot. And the initial vision you had, maybe you had a vision and a plan on how to get there. That plan might look totally different, as long as you realize that that outcome is going to be the same, right? So you're going to have those moments, though, and you need to master redirecting thoughts of doubt and worry, and really focus on channeling that energy into actions that you can take towards manifesting that goal. And be okay with pivoting when you need to, because again, life's going to throw all kind of different surprises at you, and it might throw you off course from that initial vision you had, but that's okay, right? It's like a GPS, and this road is blocked. Well, we're going to take a detour, and we're still going to wind up at the same destination that we envisioned in the first place. So guys, that's all I've got for you on visualization. Think about your own stories. And, as you guys are listening to this, I'd love to hear your story. So be sure to comment. You guys can reach out to me also online at andreadamsofficial.com or teamadamsprep.com. Email me with questions at trainingbydre@gmail.com. And then, of course, on Instagram and YouTube, I'm at @AndreAdams_official. Guys, I hope all of you guys master this concept, utilize and leverage the power of visualization, and manifest all of your goals this year in 2025. And we will see you back on the next episode of the Peak Physique Podcast.